Once again, we can see Brunei requesting the floor, and this would be the last call. So Brunei, you have the floor.
Your voice. Good morning. Testing. Hello. Good morning.
Perfect. Good morning. We can see you and we can hear you as well. Thank you very much for testing once again. And thank you everyone who tested. We will start with the meeting shortly. Thank you.
Are in nature.
Benefits.
Dear Mr. David Kubov, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor of mine to co-chair this session with His Excellency Mr. Carlos Correa. My name is Zhang Yaping. I'm the Deputy President of the Chinese Academy of Sciences, and I have been dedicated to the research on the animal evolution. As we all know that biodiversity is asking for international cooperation in order to realize the 2050 vision to live harmoniously with the nature. Biodiversity knowledge, innovation, and technical advancement provides support to the utilization and preserve of the biodiversity, which will also bring influential impact to our future. The heritage resources must be acquired with the pre-aligned approval by all the parties to the convention. Each and every party must notify the others when they are utilizing this scientific knowledge with fully participatory process. The parties shall also to provide access of the public knowledge for the purpose of communication and exchange, while taking into consideration of the developing countries' need. This information shall include the technology improvement, the research and investigation result, the know-how, and the local indigenous knowledge, as well as the industrial regulations and rules, besides the Nagoya Protocol's contents. The knowledge in innovation and resources development provides a sound foundation for our further scientific and technical development, which is also a fundamental factor for our development. To share in an equitable way the benefits is a sustainable driver to share and encourage the biodiversity. In recent years, all the parties and the Secretary of CBD have been devoted to foster the knowledge sharing and information transfer in order to further foster the development of science and technology and to share the valuable knowledge and experiences. Today, we are very pleased to have this honor to invite all the guests to share our knowledge, case studies on the 3 development goals. We bear in mind the ultimate goal that everyone could benefit from the sharing of the knowledge and innovation, and we could also realize Goal 1 and Goal 2, which is the biodiversity protection and sustainable use. Therefore, I would like to propose that each country and delegate share what is your experience, and second, your successful cases, and 3, your challenges facing in biodiversity in terms of knowledge sharing and innovation. 4th, which entities play a critical role in the innovation and development. 5, in order to encourage and foster the biodiversity, which kind of corporations and in which areas could be considered. In the end, I would like to wish a great success. To move on, according to the agenda, let's welcome Mr. Carlos Correa, Minister of Environment and Sustainable Development of Colombia.
在我们开始之前，我想请秘书处向我们提供。
Before we start, I would like to invite the Secretariat to give us some information about how to use the microphone, please.
Good day, delegates. Please note that this roundtable session will be recorded and streamed online. Please remember that as you speak, your interventions are being translated into 5 other official UN languages by a dedicated team of interpreters. We ask you to speak slowly and clearly. For those using the online system, please note that when the chair opens the floor for interventions, he will call each minister from a predetermined list. So please do not raise your hand to request the floor before the chair calls you. When the chair gives you the floor, please press the raise hand button so that the moderator can see you on the list and activate your microphone. That will turn the status bar to red, enabling you to speak. And also just a note, online participants, that the chat box is only for communications regarding technical support. It is not being moderated by the Secretariat or the chair here. Thank you very much, Mr. Co-Chair.
谢谢秘书处的介绍。再请各位部长和其他代表团。
Thank you very much for Secretariat's introduction. Before we open the floor to ministers and other heads of the delegation, I would like to start the discussion with two experts in two subject matters. First, let's invite Mr. Ma Keping from the Botany Institute of the Chinese Academy of Sciences to make a presentation. Mr. Ma, please. Okay, so now we have the video from my co-chair, Mr. Carlos Correa.
I would like to begin by extending special greetings to Mr. Zhang Yaping, Vice President of the Chinese Academy of Sciences, Mr. Ma Keping, Professor of the Institute of Botany of the Chinese Academy of Sciences, Professor Rachel Weinberg, Research Chair at the University of Cape Town, as well as all the ministers and high-level delegates joining us at this meeting. I am very pleased to participate in this event in support of China's leadership in driving this political commitment, the quest to implement transformative and concrete actions to reverse biodiversity loss around the world. As we were able to show during the pre-COP we held on August 30th, Colombia is committed to the protection of biodiversity. In that sense, we have made progress with the updating to our nationally determined contribution. The Strategy 2050 Carbon Neutrality Strategy, the enactment of the law that punishes environmental crimes, and the Climate Action Law, in which it is highlighted that by 2030 we will conserve 30% of marine protected areas and 30% of terrestrial areas. The post-2020 framework is a unique opportunity for technology creation and transfer. Science, innovation, and technology are fundamental means of implementation for promoting the development of bioeconomy, a model of efficient and sustainable management of biodiversity and biomass that helps us to generate new products. Bioeconomy is an opportunity to harness knowledge and natural capital as a force for economic growth, social development, and environmental sustainability. Its promotion is fundamental for mega-diverse and developing countries such as ours to develop new sources of added value and diversify their economies. It is important to highlight that bioeconomy plays a fundamental role in post-pandemic recovery scenarios. As to Colombia, our national strategy for reactivation and sustainable and inclusive growth sets different measures for the development of bioeconomy, including the promotion of new bioproducts and the recovery and creation of new jobs in sectors that offer products and services based on biodiversity. In this sense, we believe that the post-2020 framework should include clear signals regarding the need to generate conditions that promote new economic opportunities based on science and innovation for the sustainable use of natural capital. This framework should also include goals and objectives aimed at improving access to genetic resources and increasing the fair and equitable share of all their benefits. It is also an opportunity to include targets aimed at promoting the sharing of benefits arising from the sustainable use of biological resources and ecosystem services. International tools on access to genetic resources and benefit sharing, such as the Nagoya Protocol and the International Treaty on Plant Genetic Resources, are tools that add value to biodiversity and to the economic sectors that use it in their processes, such as the pharmaceutical, agricultural, health, cosmetics, cleaning, and chemical sectors, among others. I invite participants in this session to highlight other tools and means to support accelerated action for biodiversity, including through harnessing science, technology, and innovation, strengthening and building capacity, and increasing access to genetic resources and benefit sharing. Lastly, I would like to emphasize that the recognition, protection, and promotion of traditional knowledge associated with biodiversity and genetic resources is fundamental. Thank you very much.
谢谢里卡多何塞。
Thanks very much, Minister. Next, let's go to Rachel Weinberg from University of Cape Town. Now the floor is yours.
In this super year for nature, climate and people, we are faced not only with an unprecedented and catastrophic loss of biodiversity, but also with the loss of cultures, knowledges and innovations that have co-evolved alongside people's relationships to nature, especially among indigenous peoples and local communities who are custodians of 80% of the world's biodiversity. At the same time, the 30 years since adoption of the CBD have witnessed dramatic technological changes. As we all know, the world was a very different place when the CBD opened for signature in 1992. Modern biotechnology was only just surfacing as a revolutionary new possibility for agriculture and healthcare, and the internet was just emerging from concept to practical reality. The research and innovation space has since changed significantly, both narrowing with an increased focus on proprietary data and technologies that have sometimes reduced our capacity to take proactive initiatives, but also widening with the global research context becoming increasingly collaborative and focused on open source science and innovation. These trends shape what we know today as the Fourth Industrial Revolution, which is characterized by a fusion of technologies that blur the lines between the physical, digital, and biological spheres, and raise critical questions about how we innovate, who we innovate for, and how we ensure that this is done in a way that is equitable and fair. I have three broad reflections to share in this regard. The first is to emphasize the importance of all knowledge systems in contributing to innovation and problem solving to support conservation and sustainable use. A wealth of decentralized, diverse, and locally applicable knowledge approaches already exist among indigenous peoples and the small-scale farmers, fishers, pastoralists, forest dwellers, and women who are actively and innately practicing their own solutions that support conservation and sustainable use. These modes of innovation have received insufficient attention and have often faced obstacles alongside other more dominant knowledge and innovation paradigms. There are significant opportunities to provide greater support for such approaches, and where appropriate to blend them with modern science, whilst ensuring more equitable conditions of access, use, and ownership. My second point is to reiterate the importance of broad and regular horizon scanning and the monitoring and assessment of new and emerging technologies, including synthetic biology. We need to be mindful about the societal and environmental problems we wish to solve, to look for solutions across all knowledge systems, and to recognize that technological fixes may not always be appropriate within certain social, cultural, and environmental contexts. We should also develop other ways of assessing risk and move away from strictly technocentric approaches towards those enable more holistic ways of knowing that people needs, hopes, and aspirations. My third and final point is to re-emphasize the changed nature of our world today, and thus how critical it is to ensure benefit sharing from the use of biotechnology, synthetic biology, and associated applications, in particular for biodiversity custodians and wider conservation efforts. The challenge of digital sequence information, DSI, coincides with the biodiversity emergency we face, and it means that we are faced with a conundrum of how we can both maintain the invaluable scientific benefits that arise from open access to genetic sequence data, whilst generating the critical funding that is needed to support an inclusive, equitable, and rights-driven conservation agenda that places Indigenous peoples and local communities at the center. These are two sides of the same coin, and both are essential for the transformative change that we need. Yet fundamental questions still remain about who owns and who benefits from DSI and new technologies. Disparities in research capacity, technology, finances, and intellectual property rights have been major constraints preventing the full inclusion of the Global South in technology developments. We need to think about ways that DSI can help to resolve the health, environmental, and social crises that we face, about the incentives that can be put in place to stimulate research and development that leads to positive societal impact, about how DSI can be used to support the informational component of biodiversity, and about how it can be targeted to address food security and diseases of the poor. By framing DSI and new technologies in this way, we can see it as an opportunity to think anew, not only about ways to implement new multilateral approaches to benefit sharing, but also about ways in which we can imagine a more sustainable, equitable, and biodiversity-rich future for all. I thank you, and I send warm greetings for a very productive discussion.
Thank you very much, Professor Weinberg, for your presentation. And your presentation sets up the background for our further discussion. Distinguished participants, we'll now open the floor for ministerial interventions received on a first-come, first-served basis, taking into consideration regional balance. I kindly request ministers and other heads of delegation to not raise their hands yet, and to do so only when I call your name. As you have already been informed through the scenario note, speakers are kindly requested to summarize their key points with 3 minutes. We'll be strict about a time limit to accommodate the largest possible number of speakers. With this, I would like to give the floor to Susan, Minister of Environment from Australia.
Well, thank you very much to the Honourable Co-Chairs for convening this high-level segment as part of the 15th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity. Today's roundtable on knowledge, innovation and sharing benefits is just such an important opportunity for us all as we witness the impact of extreme weather events on our environment and its biodiversity. 2021 has been a reminder of the challenges to biodiversity from extreme weather events. In Australia, nearly 2 years ago, almost 8 million hectares were burnt in what we refer to as the Black Summer bushfires. While the impacts of these fires were devastating, we do, however, continue to establish important learnings for recovery and for adapting to future threats. Some of these learnings have already been shared with Greece in the aftermath of their recent fires. The Australian government responded quickly to the impact of the bushfires with a $200 million commitment to support the recovery of native wildlife and habitat. And the speed and scale of the response was vital. We established partnerships with scientists, researchers, Indigenous peoples, and community groups. We balanced the best available science with Indigenous ecological knowledge and local insight. We're seeing a steady, albeit an ongoing, recovery through a diverse range of innovative approaches, including, for example, using eDNA technology to help identify where the iconic platypus communities had been able to survive when people had feared the worst, the use of drone technology to support the reseeding of koala habitat, the expansion of seed banks and the genetic stores of native plants to protect future regeneration, and the establishment or expansion of 17 captive breeding and insurance population programs with zoos. Our bushfire response brought into focus the knowledge and experience of our traditional owners and how they've used fires to protect areas and help regenerate other areas through cool burns. This growing partnership between traditional owners and modern environmental science is at the centre of restoring and protecting biodiversity because Indigenous knowledge systems have formed and shaped Australia's environment. And despite the dramatic changes of modern times, we know that that knowledge and that hands-on role in managing biodiversity is invaluable. As Australia invests in a new phase of our National Environmental Science Program, one that establishes biodiversity as a national priority, our focus is on partnerships, working together to protect and enhance biodiversity, and I look forward to working with you all as COP15 progresses. I'm confident that together we can deliver an ambitious new global biodiversity framework that allows everyone to benefit from the sharing of knowledge, innovation and technology. This will help put nature on the path to recovery and safeguard our irreplaceable biodiversity for generations to come. Thank you.
谢谢。下面我们请秘书处就
Thank you very much. Now, let's give the floor back to our Secretariat for giving us further information in relation to the current proceeding.
Thank you, Co-Chair. So I just wanted to confirm for all participants, particularly participants online, just to be sure that you're in the correct meeting. This is Roundtable D on science, knowledge, innovation and benefit sharing. There is a parallel Roundtable C on biodiversity and sustainable development. So I just wanted to be sure that everyone is in the correct meeting. Thank you.
好，我们下面继续。
Next, let's move on. Let's give the floor to Forestry Minister from Malawi, Ms. Nancy Tamboli.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes. Yes.
Hello, good morning.
大家早上
Good morning to everybody participating in this group. I'm speaking from Malawi, and we would like to congratulate the People's Republic of China for hosting this important conference on biological diversity. Malawi is rich in biodiversity and committed to implementing measures that will contribute to achievement of the three objectives of the Convention on Biological Diversity. Malawi established a University of Science and Technology in which one department covers courses on indigenous knowledge systems, practices, innovations to ensure sustainability of indigenous knowledge and culture. Furthermore, the country's policies on intellectual develop community protocols to enable them effectively collaborate with different users on access to biological resources and their associated traditional knowledge. We are mindful of the potential benefits of technology, including biotechnology, in addressing challenges in agriculture and health sectors. Malawi has established laboratories for detection of living modified organisms and procedures for conducting risk assessment to manage uncertainties on potential adverse effects of such technologies on biodiversity and human beings. Hence, Malawi has put in place a robust biosafety legal and institutional framework to ensure that technologies adopted are safe for human health and environment. Malawi has developed guidelines and regulations on access and benefit sharing to regulate access and sharing of benefits from utilization of biological resources, including traditional knowledge and digital information. Development of community protocol is underway to strengthen community capacities to manage their resources and knowledge and ensure obtaining fair benefit from any of their resources and knowledge. We join the rest of the world in implementing measures that will contribute to the achievement of a shared future for all life on Earth. Malawi commits to fully implement the National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plans and strive towards the 2050 vision of living in harmony with nature. Besides our efforts, Malawi, like most developing countries, still faces challenges that affect the effective implementation of biodiversity conservation activities. Such challenges include limited technical and financial capacities, hence the need for urgent support for developing countries such as Malawi to enhance conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity. I thank you for your attention. Yes.
谢谢。下面我们请文莱。
Thank you. Now, let's welcome Minister of Sustainable Resources and Tourism, Nadu Abana, to give a speech from the Republic of Malawi.
Brunei, right? Brunei Dar es Salaam.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for giving Brunei the opportunity to address this very distinguished gathering to look at measures to prevent and reverse biodiversity loss, and in particular, at how each one of us, at the individual as well as regional and global level, can ensure that we benefit from the sharing of knowledge and innovation. Brunei Darussalam recognizes the importance of biodiversity and the need to conserve and preserve it, provides the necessary goods and services that will influence sustainable growth and achieve our economic potentials. While 72% of our country's land area remains to be covered by pristine tropical rainforests, peat swamp forests, and mangrove ecosystems, we understand that maintaining them in the pursuit of economic development is a major challenge, and we believe that through innovation and knowledge sharing on best practices and successful initiatives, we should be able to do this. We look forward to learn and share these ideas in this roundtable discussion. Excellencies, Brunei Darussalam, as Chair of ASEAN 2021, is therefore pleased to present on behalf of ASEAN the ASEAN Joint Statement to the 15th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to the Convention of Biological Diversity. Biodiversity and its associated ecosystem service provide a multitude of opportunities for livelihood and economic development, contribute to poverty alleviation, technology and innovation, serve as an effective adaptation and mitigation measures against climate change impacts and natural disasters, and are crucial to building resilience against pandemic and the alarming rise of zoonotic and new and emerging diseases, as may be gleaned from the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework and the One Health approach. With this in mind, the ASEAN member states have agreed to, among others, to identify regional efforts to protect on protected areas, in particular to improve the management effectiveness of ASEAN heritage parks through research, technology transfer, innovation, capacity enhancement, and the adoption of sustainable financing strategies. This is consistent with ASEAN's call for CBD parties and other governments to develop a post-2020 GBF that will conserve and restore priority ecosystems with strong action to curb species extinction, improve management effectiveness of protected areas, promote sustainable use, and secure the fair and equitable benefit sharing from the utilization of genetic resources. Transformative action, mainstreaming biodiversity across various development sectors, and the sustainable management of ecosystems, including through ecosystem-based approach, nature-based solutions, and as well as the participation and contribution of subnational governments, the private sector, IPLCs, women, and the youth are but a few measures that the ASEAN Joint Statement identifies as our way forward. Through cross-sectoral coordination, partnerships, public participation and engagement, and optimizing the role of global, regional, and sub-regional institutions such as the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity, we can develop and implement an ambitious and realistic post-2020 GBF to achieve the 2050 vision of living in harmony with nature. In closing, ASEAN recognizes the synergizing efforts through regional and international coordination and collaboration is crucial in ensuring the continuity of our biodiversity and its ecosystem. As such, Brunei Darussalam wishes to share ASEAN commitment to work closely with international community through appropriate institutional collaboration, continuous dialogue, and inclusiveness to implement solutions and jointly ensure sustainable development where all forms of life on Earth will thrive and survive together. Thank you, Your Excellencies, and stay safe.
谢谢。接下来，我们请
Thank you. Next, let's invite the Republic of Maldives. Minister of Technical Cooperation.
The Maldives. Firstly, let me congratulate China for arranging the Ministerial high-level event and the proposed Kunming Declaration. The time to protect our planet is now. The recent IPCC report and the IBBES Global Biodiversity Assessment has only confirmed what we knew decades back. The red alert is on. The IPCC report projects up to 90% of coral loss by 2100 under 1.5 degree scenario. For the Maldives, this translates into loss of 90% of our land, 90% of our economy, and 90% of our livelihoods. Frequent coral bleaching has already reduced live coral cover to nearly 20%. Extreme weather events are destroying vulnerable infrastructures. Protecting our home is a daily battle for us. Everything is at stake. Our income, our food, and our survival depends on climate-related vulnerabilities. Our contribution to global warming is negligible, but we don't want to only be victims. We also can be victors. Despite the challenges, small island developing states are determined to be part of the global solution by striving to take ambitious climate action and committing to achieving low emission development and a climate resilient future. In the Maldives, we are determined to reach net zero by 2030, dependent on the support received from donors and our development partners. We are making plans to shift our economy from running on diesel to running on sunshine. We have the world's most sustainable fisheries industry. We catch our fish one by one. We already have protected 13% of our reef area. We are committed to protecting our reefs, mangroves, and ecologically significant areas by 20% by 2030. We are also phasing out single use plastics by 2023. We are part of the High Ambition Coalition and the Global Ocean Alliance in supporting of protecting 30% of the global ocean and that of land. However, we cannot do this unilaterally. Regional and global cooperation is key. Excellencies, we are a large ocean country that depends on the coral reefs and the vulnerable resources of the ocean for our survival. We cannot achieve our commitments without the support from the developed countries. We need innovative and tailored solutions that are easily accessible and affordable to address our unique island challenges. Solutions for reefs are yet to be discovered. Effective reef restoration techniques are key to bringing our reefs back. Knowledge on the ocean is limited. We need to unlock the potential of the ocean through investment in island specific innovations, knowledge, and technology development. It is crucial that innovations, knowledge, and technology developed elsewhere are transferred to the vulnerable countries like the Maldives. Only then we will survive the projected climate crisis. We highly anticipate adoption of targets towards such commitments through the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework through the second segment of the COP15 in April, May next year in Kunming. Thank you, Co-Chair.
Thank you. Next, I will give the floor to South Africa. Ambassador, please.
Good morning. Co-chairperson, am I visible? Hello? I've raised my hand, but I can't get my mic on.
Mic is on. We can hear you.
Okay,
Oh, thank you.
okay.
Please go.
I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. Honorable Co-Chairperson, Excellencies, distinguished delegates.
我们可以听到，好，谢谢。
South Africa.
We can hear you very well.
Therefore, we believe it is essential to ensure that the benefits of such biodiversity are fully realized and continue exploring sustainable ways of using them to contribute to our economic and technological development. At the heart of South Africa's developmental agenda is the urgent need to address the triple challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. As such, specific national regulations for bioprospecting, access, and benefit sharing have been actively implemented for more than a decade. In implementing these regulations, prior informed consent and establishment of mutually agreed terms in the form of material transfer agreements and benefit sharing agreements are compulsory for accessing indigenous genetic and biological resources and associated traditional knowledge for bioprospecting or biotrade activities in South Africa. These provisions are further strengthened by the implementation of our Indigenous Knowledge Act. In addition, the intellectual property rights arising from publicly financed research are protected and commercialized for the benefit of South African people. All these measures are done to strengthen our commitment to Nagoya Protocol. We are currently reviewing these tools to further align to the requirements of a dynamic access and benefit sharing environment and to the practical realities imposed by new technologies such as digital sequence information on genetic resources. Ladies and gentlemen, South Africa is one of the countries that has been benefiting from the safe use of agricultural biotechnology for the past 24 years. The ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has led to some inequitable trends. South Africa, therefore, strongly advocates for fair access and equitable benefit sharing, technology transfer, and for capacity building that will support developing countries to achieve their developmental goals. The reality is that these goals will only be attained if there is adequate provision of predictable, appropriate, and accessible means of implementation support to developing countries. In this regard, South Africa advocates for a balanced approach that will ensure that unrealistic expectations or complex bureaucratic systems do not unintentionally prevent developing countries from benefiting from local research, development, innovation, and deployment of technologies which would otherwise have contributed to their sustainable development. I thank you, Co-Chairperson.
好，谢谢。
Thanks very much. Next, let's give the floor to Environmental Protection and Tourism Multilateral Representative and Envoy, Dr. Thomas from Grenada.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Thank you for your kind invitation to speak. Excellencies, on behalf of the government and people of Grenada, I thank the People's Republic of China for the great support provided to biodiversity and for hosting this pivotal biodiversity conference. Thank you for hosting this innovative and unprecedented event in an unprecedented era of simultaneous multiple crises, including biodiversity crisis, climate crisis, health pandemic, and sustainable development challenges. From the perspective of small island developing states, as we develop the global biodiversity framework, as we fix the rules of the Paris Agreement, as we call for urgent and ambitious actions, And as we address the sustainable development challenges, we must reiterate the unique biodiversity of island ecosystems, including high endemism, coupled with unique socio-economic realities and special circumstances as a consequence of these compounded crises. The program of work on island biodiversity said it well and reinforced by ICPES assessments that island ecosystem can be microcosms where strategies, policies, and management regimes for sustainable development can be applied, tested, and refined. This is undisputed. In this regard, we argue that in this unprecedented era, for everyone to benefit from biodiversity-related knowledge, technologies, and innovation, that the focus must be placed on building capacity and strengthening institutional frameworks for technology assessment, knowledge, innovation on the national level. Island economies must be supported to develop national and regional technology centers of excellence to address and implement not only the new and ambitious global biodiversity framework, but also the Paris Agreement, the Sustainable Development Goals, the Disaster Risk Reduction Framework, and other related global frameworks and conventions. With this backdrop, we argue that there is a direct link between facilitated access to biodiversity finance, climate finance, development finance, and bridging the gap of knowledge, technology, and innovation. Indeed, it is an imperative that the gap analysis must include not only the technical capacity needs, but must also include comprehensive education and public awareness, collaborative approaches, whole of society approaches, inclusive and synergetic approaches, and integration in national planning and budgeting, and of course, mainstreaming. These are imperatives for achieving sustainable development, for the future we want, and for living in harmony with nature. Island economies can point the way, and we ought to leave no one behind in these unprecedented times. I thank you, Chairman.
Thanks very much. Next, let's give the floor to Deputy Minister of Environmental Protection, Altama Ebslasin Peti from Saudi Arabia.
السلام عليكم، هل تسمعونني؟ رجاء تأكيد.
Good morning, everyone. Do you hear me all right? In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful, Your Excellencies, the Chair of Delegations, may the peace of God and His mercy be upon you all. Allow me first to extend to you on behalf of the government of Saudi Arabia the deep thankfulness to the Republic of China for hosting this COP15 meeting as we brace for the UN Conference on Biodiversity 2022. It goes under the theme Ecological Civilization, Building a Future for All. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia would like to emphasize the importance of this meeting, which is focused on promoting biodiversity, which is a very important pillar in achieving Sustainable Development Goal 15, Life on Earth. This international attention comes in alignment with the KSA Vision 2020, which has featured conservation and preservation of nature and its components, as well as the development of the nature, and make sure it is diversified, being an essential component of life. The Vision 2020 focused on so many ecosystem components and their developments, and this is becoming cascaded into its national strategies and action plans. Ladies and gentlemen, the KSA has given great attention to the protection of nature, its sustainability, and the preservation of biodiversity, in addition to addressing the natural challenges it is faced with. And for that, the KSA has launched a number of measures, procedures, and legislations, including the National Strategy for Environment, which underpins all efforts for development and environmental and transformation. There is also the National Strategy for Biodiversity. Also, we have seen a reconfiguration of the structure of many environmental entities, including the Environmental Fund, in order to meet these objectives. We have also worked on preparing a national system that would allow fair and equitable distribution of the benefits generated from biodiversity. Many sub-local and local community action plans have been created in order to cater to the local needs. Also, the KSA has also focused on Goal 11 of Aichi for biodiversity, and for that it has actually launched many initiatives. Now we are focused on expanding the natural reserves and making sure that the systems of natural reserves are aligned with the Vision 2030. And we are focused on launching a comprehensive program for the management of natural reserves and creating an automated system for such management. Also, Council on National Royal Natural Reserves has been established, which is envisaged to oversee all of these initiatives. Ladies and gentlemen, at the international and regional level, the KSA also participate actively in addressing international natural challenges like the issue of deforestation and climate change, etc. In the G20 summit meeting hosted by the KSA in 2020, we have issued a clear statement on addressing the environmental issues with practical measures. We have also we will be focusing on assisting and supporting two green initiatives in Saudi Arabia and in the region, aimed at protecting Earth and the nature as a whole. These initiatives will help us reduce and curb the loss of biodiversity. These initiatives include a number of goals, including increasing the green cover, as well as reducing the CO2 emission by 4% in these targeted areas, increasing the space of the green areas in the region in the KSA by 30% by 2030. In conclusion, the KSA welcomes the Corning declaration coming declaration themed under the theme of this meeting today. We really hope that we all make sure to pool resources and join efforts in order to preserve the nature and our nature and its resources, to preserve the future of our future generation. I really hope that by doing this, we will ensure the well-being of everybody, every one of us in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Next, let's give the floor to Agricultural Minister Representative from Iran, Dr. Sankar.
Hello. Morning. Hearing me?
Please go ahead.
Thank you. In the name of God, distinguished excellencies, participants, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Islamic Republic of Iran, I would first like to appreciate the People's Republic of China for hosting such an extraordinary global meeting under current COVID-19 pandemic, and the CBD team for their tireless effort in the regard. As you know, biodiversity is a sense of the continuation of all forms of life. The Islamic Republic of Iran make all effort to best of its capacity to conserve biodiversity posed in the jurisdiction. Iran, like many other parts of the world, enjoy diverse climate and environment. This has resulted in evaluation of such unique ecosystem as the hottest place on the earth, Lut Desert, the largest closed water body, the Caspian Sea, and the unique Hyrcanian forest. Iran is the center of origin and diverse of many valuable genetic resources such as wheat, barley, apple, saffron, statue, roses, Persian sturgeon, and Persian cheetah, and pay enormous attention for scientific endeavors for conservation of biodiversity. Dear participants, Article 16 of CBD calls all parties to transfer relevant modern technology to developing countries. Access to germplasm has been granted by adoption of the Nagoya Protocol. But so far, there is no reliable protocol to ensure the access of developing countries to relevant technology. Iran is therefore officially requesting the Secretariat of CBD to initiate the procedure to addressing this issue. Contradicting the spirit of CBD, Iran is suffering from illegal and unilateral sanctions. These sanctions have sharply affected national plan to conserve biodiversity and all related activity, including scientific and technical exchange and collaboration. Environment matters should not suffer from political issue. As an example, every year Anzaris Lagoon hosts millions of migratory birds of some 80 per species, not respecting the country border. COVID-19 is another example. Prevention of and the cure for such disease require full commitment and collaboration of all countries. Any failure in one country will have immediate impact at global scale. Therefore, reminding our respectability, I wish gently request the CBD and as well as GEF to act independent from any political pressure. Iran is prepared to share its experience with regard to biodiversity conservation with the rest of the world and embrace all sorts of collaboration in this regard. Thank you very much for your attention.
谢谢，谢谢赞德博士的建议。
Thank you very much, Dr. Zander. Next, let's welcome Ambassador of Austria to China, Mr. Andreas Kiekens.
Ministers, Excellencies, dear co-chairs, colleagues. Let me start by conveying greetings and best wishes of the Austrian Minister for Climate Action, Mrs. Leonore Gewessler, for a successful meeting in Kunming. We express our sincere thanks to the People's Republic of China for organizing this meeting and inviting us to take part today. Undoubtedly, this is an outstanding opportunity to support the ongoing negotiations for the new global biodiversity framework. Austria is strongly committed to an ambitious and transformative post-2020 global diversity framework. Agreeing the new global diversity targets on paper is certainly not enough. The targets to be adopted by COP15 next year need to be brought to life. Effective implementation of the new framework will be key. Development and implementation of the new global biodiversity framework needs to be based on both sound knowledge and participatory processes. We acknowledge that new technologies could provide valuable support to the conservation, sustainable use, and restoration of biodiversity. For example, remote sensing and use of satellite tracking technologies for generating data. As we have experienced during the pandemic, new technologies also help us to connect with each other and thus contribute to exchange of knowledge and strengthen participatory processes. This said, we are also very much concerned about potential negative impacts of new technologies, such as synthetic biology on nature, biodiversity, and human health. Austria has a strong and long-standing position that is based on the precautionary approach, risk assessments, and risk management measures. Furthermore, prior informed consent and involvement of potentially affected groups of societies are crucial principles. Dear colleagues, we understand the importance that many parties attach to further improving access to genetic resources and the fair and equitable sharing of benefits arising out of their utilization. Austria takes this very seriously, and together with all EU member states, we implement the measures necessary at the national level. Dear co-chairs, biodiversity is high on the agenda of the Austrian government. At national level, we have started a participatory process that brings together all actors and stakeholders concerned with the aim to develop a new national biodiversity strategy. This strategy will also provide solutions for tackling drivers of biodiversity loss in Austria and establish the knowledge base needed to take effective actions. We believe that effective biodiversity strategies require whole of government and whole of society approaches. Thus, national biodiversity strategies need to maximize synergies with all other relevant national strategies and policies, such as on climate change, agriculture, forestry, tourism, sustainable development, and many more. I thank you very much for your attention.
谢谢各位部长的发言。
刚才
Very much for the speech. We just now haven't had the chance to hear Professor Ma Keping from China. Now the technical problem is solved. Let's welcome Professor Ma.
And gentlemen, good morning. As you know, CBD COP15 is one of the most important COPs for promoting global agenda for biodiversity conservation. An ambitious and actionable post-2020 global biodiversity framework will be reviewed and approved at COP15. After the approval of the framework, the most challenging issue is the effective implementation of the framework. In this context, knowledge, innovation, and benefit sharing will play a critical role. However, given that the majority of megadiversity countries are developing countries, the success of the framework implementation in the future 10 years will largely rely on how developing parties share, acknowledge, and benefit equitably. Furthermore, advanced technologies should be transferred to developing countries to build capacity in order to conserve, sustainably use their invaluable biodiversity. Therefore, international cooperation is necessary to share data and technology, as well as to foster the scientific and technical capacity of developing countries. Mobilizing available knowledge is critical to ensure effective action on biodiversity. While there remain gaps in knowledge and capacity to address biodiversity loss and urgent actions, considerable opportunities remain for recognizing the value of indigenous and local knowledge systems. Many technologies are already available to help monitor, use, conserve, and restore biodiversity, such as satellite remote sensing and near-surface remote sensing tools, and ongoing advances in biotechnology and synthetic biology, and recent progress on the tracking and tracing supply chains. Yet, considerable needs remain for capacity building, for the application of knowledge, and for the adaptation and transfer of technologies and their safe deployment. Innovation can occur at many levels, such as the development of new high-tech, but also low-tech advances in farming techniques, adapting to new climate events, or the restoration of a particular ecosystem by local communities. It is necessary to ensure broad stakeholder engagement and capacity building for innovation in order to foster a sense of co-ownership and ensure that innovations are not only technically and economically feasible, but also socially acceptable. Access and benefit sharing instruments have the potential to generate benefits for society and biodiversity. However, progress towards operationalizing the fair and equitable sharing of benefits resulting from the use of genetic resources and associated traditional knowledge has been limited. Maximizing the synergies between various global goals, such as biodiversity and climate, to maximize benefits and minimize risk is needed. Dear fellow colleagues, let us work together to promote continued scientific research and technology innovation from all sources to provide comprehensive information on biodiversity to better inform decision-making on its conservation, sustainable use, and the fair and equitable sharing of benefits. Thanks.
谢谢马克平教授精彩的发言。
Thank you very much, Professor Ma, for your wonderful speech. Our next speaker will be Philippines, the Environmental and Natural Resources Minister.
Philippines thanks the government of People's Republic of China and the Secretariat of the CBD for convening the first half of the sessions for the 15th conference of the parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity. We appreciate this opportunity to come together, notwithstanding the present challenges that we face as a global community. And we are hopeful that in-person meetings and negotiations can soon resume. For this roundtable session, we wish to highlight several items in the zero draft of the Kunming Declaration, which are relevant to the theme of this segment. First, the Philippines affirms its support for proposed paragraph 8, under which parties to the convention commit to intensify efforts to ensure the fair and equitable sharing of benefits from the utilization of genetic resources and associated traditional knowledge, while being mindful of the various ways these resources are currently used in any form, given current development in technology. We have much to learn from the traditional knowledge systems of Philippine indigenous people that have allowed them to effectively protect the environment. In this regard, we maintain Philippine policies such as Republic Act 8371 or the Indigenous People Rights Act and the 2005 Guidelines for Bioprospecting Activities, which safeguard indigenous people's ownership, control, and protection of their cultural and intellectual rights. The Philippines likewise supports proposed paragraph 9, which seeks to strengthen measures for the regulation, assessment, and management of relevant biotechnologies. Robust assessments are necessary if we are to ensure that the objectives of the convention are maintained and are not diluted by the enthusiasm for novel technologies. This position is consistent with our current efforts, such as the conduct of rigorous and comprehensive technology assessments in the health sector under Republic Act 11223 or the Universal Care Act. In addition, we would like to reiterate the need to enhance capacity building activities and increase support to develop appropriate regulations that maximize the benefits from the safe use of living modified organisms. This emphasis on public health is a key lesson that we seek to internalize after more than a year of coping with the COVID-19 pandemic. This health crisis has shown how important it is to develop a green economy, where policies promote and support an integrated approach to public health, sustainable natural resource use, and inclusive environmental protection and conservation. The common good of our citizens depends on this green normal. Lastly, we wish to reiterate that these two elements, namely fair and equitable benefit sharing, robust assessment of new and emerging technologies, and enhanced capacity building, should be adequately reflected in the post-2020 global biodiversity framework. We look forward to hearing other views on these matters. We hope that the meetings this week will lay a strong foundation that in-person negotiation next year can build on. Thank you very much.
谢谢。
Thank you. Next, we'll have some videos presentation. First, let's go to Ireland. And we have Minister Mark Holland from Ireland.
Speaking to you all today, representing Ireland at this first phase of the long-awaited COP15. Reversing biodiversity loss is among the greatest challenges of our times. Ireland is committed to working together with its international partners to realise an ambitious post-2020 global biodiversity framework that achieves real transformative change. Engagement with the CBD and its protocols underpins this commitment. In 2019, Ireland introduced national legislation to implement the EU ABS regulation. This is an important step in putting in place an effective and durable access and benefit sharing framework to allow practical implementation of the Nagoya Protocol. On foot of the ABS regulation, the European Commission developed and deployed a software platform, Declare, for use by member states to process and monitor due diligence declarations. This platform is particularly useful for smaller countries like Ireland, who may not have the resources immediately available to put dedicated systems in place to regulate the processes involved in the application of the protocol. Our next step is to ratify the protocol, and we are working towards this in my department at the moment. I would like to see this process completed before COP15 reconvenes for Phase 2 next year. In the context of Ireland's ongoing engagement with CBD and discussions around the new global biodiversity framework, the principles of the protocol are important to discussions around the role of Indigenous and local communities in halting biodiversity loss. While there is a clear ecological imperative to the protocol, there is also an ethical and moral imperative. Implementation of the protocol demonstrates that in tackling the biodiversity crisis, there should be fairness and transparency. The protocol is a key element of a just transition. It is important that local and Indigenous communities involved in transactional relationships within the scope of the protocol are listened to, and that their experiences of how the protocol has worked or not worked so far are given proper consideration. Local and Indigenous communities safeguard so much valuable knowledge and expertise that must be considered appropriately in our global efforts to address the biodiversity crisis. These communities often live in proximity to nature, working with nature rather than against it. There are lessons for us all in how Indigenous and local communities around the world have existed in cooperation with nature rather than in competition with it. Often facing existential threats to their way of life and to their homes, these communities nonetheless are standing up for nature. In doing so, they are representing all of us who hope for a better future for the natural world and for the coming generations who rely on us, who must grasp the opportunity to safeguard their place in it. I will do my very best as the Minister with responsibility for biodiversity to ensure that Ireland ratifies and implements the protocol. My department will work with stakeholders across government, academia and the private sector to raise awareness of the protocol, its mechanisms, principles and obligations. We will support implementation of the protocol that improves the relationships between users and providers, facilitating improved access to resources while giving providers, particularly Indigenous and local groups, a greater confidence in the global framework that underpins and regulates these relationships. Ireland will continue to participate along with our EU colleagues in the ongoing discussions around access and benefit sharing with the aim of safeguarding the role and the future of Indigenous and local communities around the globe. We support the protocol's objective of ensuring greater fairness and legal certainty in transactional relationships between users and providers of traditional knowledge and genetic resources. I look forward to continued productive engagement in the coming months through the High Ambition Coalition, Sebesta and SBI, and of course at Phase 2 of COP15 next year, where we will reconvene to agree on the new post-2020 framework.
谢谢。
Thank you very much. Next, please play the video from Bohi. Ms. Ita Jabonic.
Distinguished ministers, delegates and excellencies, it is my great pleasure and honor that Bosnia and Herzegovina is a part of this meeting and that we are dedicated to the better world for the future. Nature is a fundamental part of Bosnia and Herzegovina's national identity and ethnology. People from this area are aware of the value of nature and the wild species and the essential role that play in our health and well-being. Healthy ecosystems are the foundation of every part of our lives. The world is facing major economical, social, and ecological challenges. The last 2 years were challenging to all parties, but particularly to the developing country parties that have been going through uncharted and challenging times since the outbreak of the COVID-19. The grave toll in a term of loss of lives, public health challenges, and the diverse impact on economic activities have augmented the development challenges faced by developing countries. But in a parallel, the changes of biodiversity loss continue unabated. Bosnia and Herzegovina, like other countries, are facing an increasingly urgent need in all environmental actions. We are dedicated and supportive of a 2050 vision, living in harmony with nature. Respecting the urgent need for action parallel with the global biodiversity framework and in line with the EU Green Plan and the Green Agenda for the Western Balkans, Bosnia and Herzegovina is developing an environmental strategy where we have incorporated our dedication and our will to build sustainable living and the preservation of the wild habit and the species. We are stressing out the importance of the Kunming Declaration. We are aware that development is a rather risk process with a lot of challenges regarding the people's need for energy, food and resources. In the last 2 years, COVID-19 has disrupted economies and the livelihood, deepened inequalities and the risk sending people into extreme poverty. Also, we would like to highlight in the point 16th the importance of the knowledge and experience sharing among the countries and the regions, since this has been proven as an effective tool for the developing countries. The biggest advantage for the developing countries is to learn from others. In the end, all of us want the same thing, a healthy planet that provides essential services and benefits for all our needs and those of future generations. So let's keep this in mind when we're deciding on the further steps in the next few days. Hopefully, we see each other in person in a beautiful city, Kunming, next year. Thank you.
接下来，请播放。
Thanks. Next, please play the video from Environmental and Ocean Minister, Mr. Lee White from Gabon.
Honourable Chair, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, COVID-19, climate change, and the biodiversity extinction crisis are all issues that call for us to reconsider our relationship with nature. Their solutions will depend in part on how we integrate science and technology and local knowledge systems to change behaviours and the decisions we make. In Gabon, one way we are recognising community knowledge is through participatory mapping of villages across the country, all 2,500 of them, including areas of traditional and customary use. Currently, we are testing mapping technologies with different communities to find the best way to represent and integrate their information in our national land use plan. It would be impossible to capture this information without merging our knowledge systems. In this way, we are acknowledging traditions and cultures alongside our sustainable development and conservation goals. We are also strongly committed to capacity building in addressing environmental problems. Earlier this year, after nearly a decade of professional development in the fisheries sector, we were pleased to expand our satellite vessel tracking system to include our entire fleet of artisanal as well as industrial boats. Being able to apply state-of-the-art technology to keep fishermen safe and improve the sustainability of catches was only possible due to years of engagement beforehand at all levels of developers, technicians, and fishermen. In a similar vein, several years ago, we established a national space agency to monitor our forests. Our first step was to invest in a scholarship program to train up skilled scientists capable of generating the data and information needed to manage our forests and biodiversity. The training came first to apply the technology that could inform the decisions we make. Ladies and gentlemen, in renewing our pledge to biodiversity, Gabon reaffirms its commitment to strengthening its scientific capacity and using science to inform policy. However, without international cooperation and technology transfer, we will not reach.
Thank you very much. Next, please play the video of the United Arab Emirates.
I would like to transfer the gratitude of the UAE and also to thank China for hosting and organizing this highly important conference. And I value the effort made by the participants to support and mobilize global action to conserve biodiversity. Your Excellencies, protecting the environment and the resources, offers a priority that we must all work to achieve, and also in case with securing the knowledge and traditional practices that people have developed over centuries. The more we know our environment, drive innovation, and support knowledge transfer exchange, our better ability to protect and conserve nature resources and biodiversity. In the last decades, the world has witnessed multiple challenges that are a result of human activities and natural impacts. Diversity affected all the component environment, giving the rise of these adverse effects, expecting collective action, adhering to international agreement, and advancing scientific research, technology transfer, capacity building was very important. Distinguished guests, while seeking to drive sustainable growth, we must recognize that technology, innovation, and knowledge transfer are the core tools to tackle challenges to biodiversity. In this context, URD has implemented an integrated host of policies that mitigate the challenge facing the environment, especially the transition to green economy, the UAE circular economy policy, the national food security, national climate change plan, the national biodiversity strategy, and the federal law on accessing genetic resources and its derivative and invasive alien species strategy and action to UAE net zero by 2050. Dear distinguished guests, in building a sustainable future, there are still many challenges ahead of us that require us to step up our effort. I hope this important meeting will contribute to boosting our work through adopting more innovative solutions and also through the different experiences and getting sustainable. In closing, I would like to thank your steadfast commitment to ensuring the sustainability of our environment and its components. Thank you very much.
下面，请播放墨西哥转基因生物。
Next, please play the video of Mexico. The Executive Secretary, Mr. Cartos.
Afro-mexicanos.
Mexico fully recognizes the legacy of indigenous people, Afro-Mexicans, and local communities in the construction of a system through age-old domestication processes of plant species. These domestication processes have been constituted through multiple cultures and visions of these people who, through the building up of robust bridges between natural environment and diverse cultural manifestations, have given rise to dynamics and common goods of great value to humanity. Thus, Mexico's vast biocultural wealth is found in the traditional knowledge, technologies, and innovations associated with the generation, conservation, and use of multiple species, of which the country is the center of origin and diversification, including chili, cotton, beans, squash, and maize, of course, whose color and shape varieties and high nutritional content are a reflection of the great genetic diversity that constitutes them and is the product of the cross-generational efforts of Mexican cultures. As legitimate generators of this diversity and as bearers of traditional knowledge, it is essential that the rights of indigenous peoples and local communities be recognized and respected. Therefore, in view of the development of modern biotechnology, including synthetic biology, which have as their source the genetic diversity of varieties generated by indigenous peoples and local communities, strict public biosafety policies must be developed that incorporate a human rights approach. Mexico recognizes that the effective implementation of the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety is of great value as part of current international environmental commitments and welcomes the fact that the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework includes biosafety among its objectives, as well as the establishment of an implementation plan for the Cartagena Protocol complementary to the global framework. Our country is convinced that this protocol must be implemented with a comprehensive strategy that puts biosafety principles, especially the precautionary principles, first.
下面我们请播放。
Next, we'll welcome Director Cynthia Asali. Please play her video.
Colleagues from around the world, I bring you warm felicitations from the government and people of Ghana. We salute China for her tenacity in the organization of the 15th COP, which has been delayed as a result of the unexpected health emergencies that has engulfed the world and which have thrown the orderly systems of hosting international conferences into chaos and a state of helplessness. Thank you, China, for your understanding and patience. As a developing country, Ghana is endowed with huge biological resource, a rapporteur of traditional knowledge and folklore. What is lacking is the capacity, both at the international and personal level, in the documentation of these resources. Ghana, like other countries, is witnessing deforestation and land degradation with its attendant loss of biodiversity and being alarmed about the new wave of accessing genetic resources through novel techniques without reference to the original owners. I get worried about the future of the Nagoya Protocol on access and benefit sharing. In this vein, my ministry, in collaboration with other ministries, has started the processes of documenting the Nagoya Protocol to pave way for us to enact the necessary legislations, identify and designate state institutions with the requisite knowledge on genetic resources and capabilities, which can be considered as the reference point in the transfer agreements of the protocols. We are also working closely to empower institutions of learning to consider special training courses in the use of new technologies to add value to the genetic resources of our country. As a developing country, Ghana is also concerned about the proliferation of digital sequence information (DSI), which, in our understanding, is taking away the shine in the implementation of the Nagoya Protocol. We therefore appeal to parties and other governments when dealing with the discussions on DSI to negotiate fairly and find acceptable texts that will salvage the Nagoya Protocol, which was fairly and painfully negotiated earlier. With my ministry also responsible for innovation, I wish to emphasize our goal of seeing science and technology as a means to transform the livelihood of people, and we will therefore welcome opportunities for collaboration to help us enrich our knowledge on using innovation to achieve benefit sharing to all parties. His Excellencies, colleagues, I thank you for your attention.
谢谢。接下来
Thank you. Next, please play the video of Mozambique Minister Alvin Mabasta.
请播放。
Well, we would like to thank the previous speakers or the ministers. Next, we will have a 3 to 5 minutes break before we're having the closing remark.
So we will resume in a few minutes. All those online, please stay online. Do not log out or leave the meeting. Thank you.
好。
Esteemed deputies, representatives, thank you so much for your presentation. Once again, thank you so much for all the valuable discussion. Even though we have had some technical issues in our discussions, this has not affected your enthusiasm as well as the brilliance of our round table. Focusing on knowledge, sharing, and benefit, we believe these are going to play important role in post-2020 global biodiversity framework. We had a nice discussion. Once again, I want to say a big thank you to the contribution made by all ministers in relation to biodiversity protection. And also to our lovely experts here, I want to say a big thank you as well. You've made so much commitment and contribution to our round table today. And also we have 22 ministers doing presentations here. This shows that unleashing potential in technologies, this is important to achieving post-2020 global biodiversity framework. And also the use of data and digital technologies is another issue that is worth paying attention to. Also, we highlight the important contribution made by local and indigenous people, especially in important knowledge and practices they have. We have the following focus of this roundtable, which includes the following. 1. Continuous scientific research and innovation in traditional knowledge is very important to biodiversity protection, as well as the access and protection of all the benefits. We believe all this will lay an important solid foundation for biodiversity protection. And also, it's very important for us to implement the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety and Nagoya Protocol. 3rd, technical transfer assessment, information sharing and capacity and building are important to the implementation of post-2020 global diversity framework. 4th, in relation to knowledge, use, application and sharing, technical transfer in a safe fashion, we still need to strengthen capacity building. 5th, in order to make sure we have a fair and just use of genetic resources and information, especially thinking about challenges brought by artificial intelligence, we need right policies and solutions and right application. But also at the same time, we need to do further research and discussion in order to find the right policy mix. Lastly, all ministers emphasize the importance of multilateralism as well as country-to-country cooperation, especially in relation to sharing knowledge and technologies, strengthening capacity building in developing countries, but in a fair and just fashion. Representatives, excellencies, this is the end of a round table. The high-level segment, round table D, is coming to a close, and the last session will begin at 3 o'clock Beijing time. Once again, thank you so much for your participation. Thank you so much. Have a great day.